You're standing in front of the mirror again, adjusting your shirt, checking the angle of your smile, wondering if this version of you is the one that people will finally notice, finally like, finally want to be around. You've been doing this your whole life, haven't you? Calculating, monitoring, rehearsing what to say before you say it, watching yourself from the outside, always evaluating, always adjusting, always trying to get it right. And here's what nobody tells you. The harder you try to be attractive, the less magnetic you become. It's a cruel paradox. You think effort equals results. You think if you just refine your presentation a little more, if you just say the right things, wear the right clothes, project the right energy, people will be drawn to you. But the opposite happens. The more you try, the more something feels off. Not to you, necessarily. You're too busy performing to notice. But others feel it. They sense something. A distance, a calculation. A person who's not quite there. You scroll through social media and see it everywhere. People who seem effortlessly charismatic, who post photos without overthinking the caption, who walk into rooms and command attention without appearing to try. And you wonder what they have that you don't. You wonder if they were born with some magnetic quality that you're missing. Some invisible force field that draws people in. So you study them. You try to reverse engineer their ease. You practice their confidence in the mirror. You adopt their mannerisms, their speech patterns, their way of moving through the world, and still, it doesn't work, because you're trying to become them instead of being you. There's a moment that happens to everyone who walks this path, a moment of realization that usually arrives late at night or in the middle of a conversation that feels hollow. You suddenly become aware of how exhausting this is. The constant performance, the vigilance, the monitoring of every word, every gesture, every facial expression. You realize you're not actually present in your own life. You're watching yourself live it, from a distance, like a director who's never satisfied with the take. And underneath all of this effort is a fear so primal you rarely let yourself look directly at it. If you stop trying, you'll disappear entirely. If you stop managing your image, people will see who you really are. And who you really are, you've convinced yourself, isn't enough, isn't interesting, isn't worthy of attention or affection or desire. So you keep performing, because performing feels safer than revealing, because the mask, at least, gets some response, even if that response is to the mask and not to you. But here's what's true, and what you're about to discover. That fear is lying to you. The version of you that exists beneath the performance, beneath the anxiety, beneath the constant comparison and calculation, that version is already attractive. Not to everyone. That was never the goal, but to the right people. The ones who matter. The ones who will actually see you and choose you and stay. This isn't a book about tricks. It's not about how to be more charming or more confident or more anything. Those are just more masks, more performances, more ways to hide. This is about something else entirely. Something most people never discover because they're too busy trying. This is about becoming effortlessly attractive by stopping the effort, by removing the barriers between who you are and how the world experiences you, by learning to be so fully present, so completely yourself, that people are drawn to you, not because of what you're doing, but because of who you're being. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this sounds like wishful thinking, like New Age nonsense, like advice that works for people who are already confident and attractive, but not for you. not for someone who's spent years feeling invisible or inadequate or unsure. But stay with me, because what you're about to learn isn't theory. It's neuroscience. It's psychology. It's the mechanics of human connection and the biology of attraction. And it's been tested not in laboratories but in real life, in conversations and relationships and rooms full of strangers, in all the places where you currently feel the weight of self-consciousness pressing down on you like a physical thing. By the end of this journey, attraction won't be something you chase or manufacture. It will emerge naturally from who you are becoming, not through techniques or strategies, but through a fundamental shift in how you relate to yourself and move through the world. You'll walk into rooms and feel at ease, not because you've mastered some performance, but because you've finally stopped performing. You'll have conversations where you're actually present instead of monitoring yourself from the outside, where you speak from what's true instead of what sounds good, where silence doesn't terrify you and mistakes don't define you. You'll notice people gravitating toward you without you having to work for it, because you've stopped working against yourself. This transformation doesn't require you to become someone else. It doesn't require you to adopt a new personality or fake confidence you don't feel. In fact, it requires the opposite. It requires you to stop trying to be anyone other than who you actually are. Because here's the truth that will change everything. You're not unattractive. You're just trapped in a performance that's exhausting you and alienating the very people you're trying to connect with. The magnetic, charismatic, genuinely attractive version of you already exists. Right now, beneath the anxiety, beneath the comparison, beneath every rehearsed line and calculated gesture, we're going to set it free. Not through more effort, not through self-improvement projects or personality overhauls, but through subtraction, through removing the layers of protection and performance that have been blocking your natural magnetism from radiating outward. You're going to learn why the harder you try, the worse it gets. You're going to understand the neuroscience of attraction and why presence is more magnetic than perfection. You're going to discover simple, practical tools that bring you back to yourself whenever you notice you've drifted into performance mode. And most importantly, you're going to experience what it feels like to move through the world without the constant weight of self-consciousness, to be in a conversation and actually be there, to make eye contact without monitoring how you look, to laugh without measuring whether it's the right kind of laugh, to simply exist as yourself and trust that yourself is enough. This isn't about becoming more. It's about being real. And being real, it turns out, is the most attractive thing you can do. You've been working so hard to be noticed, to be valued, to be chosen. And the terrible irony is that all that work has been keeping you from the very thing you're seeking. So what if you stopped? What if you stopped trying to impress and started being curious? What if you stopped performing confidence and started being honest about your uncertainty? What if you stopped chasing attraction and started inhabiting yourself so fully that attraction became inevitable? That's what we're here to explore. Not as theory, but as practice. Not as aspiration, but as transformation. You're tired of trying so hard. I know. You're exhausted from the constant monitoring, the vigilance, the performance that never ends. You're ready for something different. And something different is possible. Not someday. Not when you've finally figured it all out or become the person you think you need to be. Now, as you are. With all your uncertainties and imperfections, and the parts of yourself you've been trying to hide. The journey starts with a single realization. The person you've been trying to become is getting in the way of the person you already are. And the person you already are is far more attractive than any version you could construct. Welcome to the beginning of something new. Not a new you, the real you. The one that's been waiting beneath the performance all along. The one that doesn't need to try so hard. The one that's effortlessly, naturally, undeniably magnetic. Let's begin. You're at a party. Someone asks you a question and you start to answer. But halfway through your sentence, you notice yourself from the outside. You hear your own voice. You wonder if you're talking too much, if your story is boring, if they're just being polite. So you speed up. You edit as you speak. You search their face for signs of interest or disengagement. And by the time you finish, you have no idea what you actually said. You weren't there for it. You were watching yourself say it, monitoring the performance, calculating whether you passed or failed some invisible test. They smile. They nod. They say something back, and you have no idea what it was because you are already in your head, replaying what you just said, analyzing every word, wondering if you came across as interesting or awkward, or too much or not enough. This is what it's like to live in performance mode. Every interaction becomes a test. Every conversation becomes a tightrope walk where you are constantly adjusting your balance, never quite sure if you're going to make it to the other side. You go to social gatherings and find yourself at the edges of the room. Not because you want to be there, but because stepping into the center feels like stepping onto a stage where everyone's watching and you don't know your lines. So you watch instead. You watch the people who seem comfortable, the ones who laugh easily, the ones who move from group to group like it's the most natural thing in the world, and you calculate, you rehearse what you might say if you joined that conversation. You imagine different versions of yourself, funnier, more confident, more interesting, and you wonder which version would work, which version they would accept. But while you're calculating, the moment passes. The conversation moves on, and you're still standing at the edge, wondering why connection feels so hard for you when it seems so easy for everyone else. Or maybe you're in a relationship, and you love this person. You do. But you can't quite relax around them. You're constantly monitoring yourself, wondering if you're being too needy or too distant, if you're attractive enough, interesting enough, enough. You shape yourself into what you think they want. You edit your opinions to match theirs. You perform enthusiasm for things you don't care about and hide the things you love because they might seem weird or boring. And it works, in a way. They stay. They say they love you. But late at night, when you're lying next to them, there's this hollow feeling in your chest, this quiet suspicion that they don't actually know you, that they love the version you've constructed, and if that version ever slipped, if they saw who you really are beneath the performance, they might not stay. So you keep performing. Because the performance at least gets you proximity to love, even if it's not real intimacy. Even if you're lonely inside the relationship because you've exiled yourself from it. This is the hidden cost nobody talks about. The mental exhaustion of constant self-editing, of running parallel processing in every interaction. One part of you trying to be present, the other part watching, evaluating, adjusting. It's like trying to have a conversation while simultaneously commentating on your own performance. No wonder you're tired. No wonder social situations drain you. You're doing twice the work of everyone else in the room. and the relationships that come from this place feel hollow. Because they're built on performance rather than presence, on strategy rather than truth. People respond to the version you're presenting, and you know it. You know they're not seeing you. They're seeing your best approximation of what you think they want to see, which means you're never quite sure if you're actually liked, or if the mask is liked. And the mask can't receive love, can it? It can deflect it. It can smile and say thank you, but it can't take it in. Because you know the love isn't for you. It's for the performance. So you miss the moments of real connection. The times when someone reaches toward the real you, and you deflect because you're too busy managing your image. The conversation that could have gone deep but stayed surface because you were afraid to say what you actually thought. The person who might have become a real friend, but you kept them at arm's length because vulnerability felt too risky. You're so busy trying to be likable that you forget to be real. And the tragedy is that real is what people are actually hungry for. Real is what creates connection. But you can't access real when you're in performance mode. So you end up giving people exactly what they don't need. Another polished, calculated, carefully managed version of a human being, while withholding the only thing that would actually draw them in. You. And then there's the scrolling, the endless scrolling. You open your phone to check something, and 3 hours later, you're deep in someone's highlight reel, measuring yourself against their vacation photos, their relationship, their body, their life that seems so much more interesting than yours. You see the influencer who makes everything look effortless, who posts photos with captions that seem spontaneous, but took 15 tries to get right, who has 100,000 people validating their existence every time they share a thought. And you wonder what they have that you don't. You wonder if you could be like that, if you could curate your life into something equally impressive. So you try. You take the photo, you write the caption, you edit and re-edit and finally post it. And then you wait. You check for likes, for comments, for any indication that people see you and approve. And even when they do, even when the likes come, it doesn't fill the emptiness. Because you know those people aren't responding to you. They're responding to a carefully curated image, another performance, another mask. Or you're out with friends, and one of them commands the room. They tell a story, and everyone leans in. They make a joke, and everyone laughs. And you feel yourself shrink, not because you're not happy for them, but because their ease feels like evidence of your inadequacy. Their confidence feels like a rebuke to your uncertainty. And you start comparing. What do they have that I don't? How do they make it look so easy? What am I doing wrong? But here's the thing about comparison. It doesn't motivate. It paralyzes. It teaches you that attraction is about checking boxes, about following formulas, about becoming someone other than yourself. It turns your attention outward when the only place real transformation can happen is inward. You study their mannerisms. You try to replicate their energy. You attempt to be more like them and less like you. And every attempt takes you further from the only thing that could actually make you magnetic, your authentic presence. Because when you're comparing, you're not present. You're in your head, running calculations, measuring distances between who you are and who you think you should be. And that distance, that gap, is where your energy drains away. That's where your natural charisma goes to die. The comparison trap is insidious because it masquerades as self-improvement. You think you're learning. You think you're getting better. But really, you're just learning to abandon yourself more thoroughly, to trust yourself less, to believe that who you are isn't enough, and who you could be is always just out of reach. And underneath all of this, the performance, the monitoring, the comparison, the exhaustion, is a belief so deep you might not even recognize it's there. A belief that's been running the show for years, maybe decades. The belief that you're not enough as you are, that your natural way of being isn't interesting, isn't valuable, isn't worthy of attention or affection or desire. That attraction is something you have to earn through effort, through improvement, through becoming someone other than who you are. This belief didn't come from nowhere. Maybe you learned it early, when adults responded more warmly to certain versions of you than others, when being good or being quiet or being impressive got you love and being yourself got you ignored. Maybe you learned it from a culture that constantly tells you that you need to be better, different, more. Or maybe you learned it from experiences of rejection, from the times you showed up authentically and were met with dismissal or indifference or cruelty. Your nervous system learned that authenticity equals danger, that vulnerability equals pain, so it built a wall, and that wall is the performance. But here's what that belief doesn't tell you. The performance is what's keeping you from what you want, not your inadequacy, not your flaws, not the parts of you that you've been trying to hide or fix or improve. The performance itself is the problem, because when you're performing, you're not available for real connection. You're not present. You're not you. And people sense that. Not consciously, maybe. But on some level, they feel the distance. They feel that you're not quite there. And that feeling, that sense that something's missing, is what makes the interaction feel hollow. Not because you're not enough, but because you're not present. This is the cruel paradox at the heart of your struggle. You perform because you believe it will make you more attractive. But the performance is what's making you less magnetic. You try so hard to be liked that you hide the only thing that could actually be loved. You work so tirelessly to manage your image that you exile yourself from the very connections you're seeking. And the deeper wound, the one beneath all of this, is that you've come to believe that who you are isn't acceptable, that your value is conditional, that you have to earn your place in every room, every relationship, every interaction. But you don't. You never did. The exhaustion you feel, the hollowness, the sense that you're always on the outside looking in, that's not evidence that you're not enough. It's evidence that you're trying to be something you're not, and your system is rejecting it. Your soul is tired of the performance. Your body is exhausted from holding the mask in place. What if the thing you've been afraid of, stopping the performance, letting people see you as you are, is actually the doorway to everything you've been seeking? What if your natural way of being is not only enough, but magnetic? What if the parts of yourself you've been hiding are exactly what would draw the right people in? We're going to find out. But first, you need to see the performance for what it is. Not a solution. A prison. One you've been living in for so long you've forgotten there's a world outside of it. But before you can change any of this, you need to understand why it exists in the first place. Because this isn't a character flaw. This isn't weakness. This isn't evidence that something's fundamentally broken in you. This is biology. Your brain evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to care deeply, desperately, about social acceptance. And for most of human history, that care wasn't vanity. It was survival. Imagine yourself 50,000 years ago. You're part of a small tribe, maybe 30 people, maybe 50. and your survival depends entirely on staying in good standing with that group. If they reject you, if they decide you're not valuable, not trustworthy, not worth keeping around, you die. There's no appealing to another group, no moving to a different city, no starting over somewhere new. Rejection meant death. Isolation meant death. So your ancestors, who cared intensely about social acceptance, who monitored how others perceived them, who adjusted their behavior to maintain belonging, those ancestors survived. They passed on their genes. And you carry those genes now. Your nervous system is still running that ancient program. When you walk into a room full of strangers, when you fear rejection, when you monitor yourself constantly to make sure you're acceptable, your brain isn't overreacting. It's responding to what it perceives as a survival threat. Because for most of human history, it was. Being liked wasn't about popularity. It was about staying alive. Being valued wasn't about ego. It was about having a place in the tribe that would hunt with you, protect you, share food with you. Being included wasn't optional. It was everything. So when you feel that spike of anxiety before a social interaction, when your heart races at the thought of being judged, when you lie awake replaying a conversation, wondering if you said the wrong thing, you're not being dramatic. You're experiencing the activation of a system that was designed to keep your ancestors alive. Your nervous system doesn't know that rejection no longer means death. It doesn't know that you can survive without the approval of every person you meet. It's operating on ancient logic in a modern world, and that mismatch is where your suffering lives. But it goes deeper than evolution. Because while you were born with this biological wiring, you weren't born believing you had to perform to be acceptable. That was learned. Think back to childhood, to the earliest memories you have of seeking approval, of trying to be good, of monitoring yourself to see if you were doing it right. Maybe you learned that being quiet earned you praise, that being helpful made adults smile, that being impressive, getting good grades, winning awards, achieving things, was what made you valuable. And slowly, subtly, a message formed. Love is conditional. Attention is earned. Your worth depends on what you do, not who you are. Or maybe you learned the opposite lesson. Maybe your natural expression was met with disapproval. You were too loud, too emotional, too much, too sensitive, too different. And you learned to edit yourself, to make yourself smaller, to hide the parts of you that didn't fit what others could accept. Either way, the core belief took root. You are not enough as you are. You must edit yourself to be acceptable. Your value is conditional on your performance. These weren't lessons anyone sat you down and taught explicitly. They were absorbed, internalized, written into your nervous system through 1,000 small interactions where certain versions of you were met with warmth and other versions were met with withdrawal. And because you were a child, dependent on adults for survival, you adapted. You became skilled at reading the room, at sensing what was wanted, at performing the version of yourself that would keep you safe and loved and included. This was intelligent. This was adaptive. This kept you alive and connected during a time when you genuinely needed others' approval to survive. But you're not a child anymore, and the strategy that protected you then is imprisoning you now, because you never learned to turn it off. You never learned that it's safe to be yourself, that love doesn't have to be earned, that you can be accepted without performing. So you carried those childhood patterns into adulthood, and then the modern world took those patterns and amplified them into something your ancestors could never have imagined. Social media has weaponized your ancient fear of rejection and your childhood wounds around conditional worth. It's taken the social comparison that used to happen with 30 people in your village and exploded it to millions. You're no longer comparing yourself to your neighbors. You're comparing yourself to everyone, to the influencer with perfect lighting and a team of editors, to the friend who only posts their highlights, to strangers whose entire existence you're judging based on a curated grid of images, and your brain doesn't know the difference between real rejection and digital rejection. When someone scrolls past your post without liking it, your nervous system processes that as social rejection. When you see someone else getting attention you're not getting, your brain interprets that as a threat to your status in the tribe. Every like registers as acceptance. Every lack of engagement registers as dismissal. The feedback loop is constant, it's overwhelming, and it's biologically activating in ways that bypass your rational mind entirely. You're living in a world your nervous system was never designed to navigate. A world where you're constantly exposed to evidence that others are more attractive, more successful, more interesting than you. Where your worth feels like it's being tallied in real time through metrics you can see but can't quite control. And this creates something insidious, something that lives at the heart of why you can't just relax and be yourself. Self-consciousness. When you believe you're being evaluated, and social media has trained you to believe you're always being evaluated, you become hyper-aware of yourself. You split into two. Part of you trying to live your life, part of you watching yourself live it, judging whether you're doing it right. This is the trap. This is why the performance feels so exhausting. Because you're not just existing. You're simultaneously existing and observing yourself exist and evaluating whether your existence is acceptable. Psychologists call this the spotlight effect. You believe everyone is watching you, noticing you, judging you. And because you believe this, you watch yourself on their behalf. You become your own harshest observer, your own cruelest critic. And this split, this fragmentation, is what people sense as inauthenticity. It's not that you're fake. It's not that you're lying or pretending to be someone you're not. It's that you're not integrated. You're not whole. Part of you is here in the conversation, and part of you is floating above it, monitoring your performance, calculating whether you're passing or failing the test. And people feel that. Not consciously. Not in a way they could articulate. But mirror neurons in their brain pick up on your nervous system state. They sense that you're not fully present, that there's a guardedness, a distance, a quality of being simultaneously engaged and withdrawn. This is what registers as inauthentic, not dishonesty, fragmentation. And the cruel irony is that you're fragmenting yourself in service of connection. You're splitting yourself apart because you believe that's what will make you acceptable. But the splitting is what's preventing real connection from happening. Because connection requires presence. It requires someone who's actually there. And when you're busy monitoring yourself, evaluating yourself, managing your image, you're not there. You're in your head. You're performing. And the other person, on some unconscious level, knows it. So they don't let you in. Not because they've judged you and found you wanting, but because you're not actually available. You're too busy watching yourself to be with them. This is the mechanism beneath everything you've been experiencing. The ancient biology, the childhood conditioning, the modern amplification, the self-consciousness trap. They all feed into each other, creating a system that keeps you locked in performance mode, even when you desperately want to break free. But here's what changes everything. Understanding this doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. You're not broken. You're not defective. You're not uniquely flawed. You're responding exactly as you were designed to respond to the circumstances you've been living in. Your brain is doing what it was built to do, trying to keep you safe and connected. The problem isn't your brain. The problem is that the strategy it developed, the performance, the monitoring, the constant self-editing, is no longer serving you. In fact, it's working against you. True attraction doesn't emerge from perfect performance. It emerges from integrated presence, from someone who's actually there, someone who's not split between being and observing, someone who's fully inhabiting themselves without the layer of evaluation and judgment. And that's not something you have to become. It's something you have to remember how to access, because you were born with it. Every child has it. That quality of being completely absorbed in the moment, of laughing without monitoring whether the laugh is attractive, of speaking without rehearsing, of existing without evaluation. You had that once, before you learned that love was conditional, before you internalized the belief that you had to earn your place, before social media convinced you that your worth could be measured in metrics. It's still there, buried beneath the performance, waiting beneath the anxiety, present under the constant monitoring and evaluation. We're not trying to create something new. We're trying to remove the layers that have covered over what was always there. The you that doesn't need to try. The you that's naturally magnetic because you're fully present. The you that draws people in, not through technique or strategy, but through the simple power of being completely, authentically here. Your nervous system learned to fragment as a form of protection. Now it needs to learn that it's safe to integrate, that you don't need the performance anymore, that you can be whole and still be loved, that you can be present and still be safe. This is the work. Not fixing yourself, not becoming someone new, but unlearning the patterns that made sense then but are hurting you now. Your brain has been trying to protect you. It's time to teach it a new way. A way where protection doesn't require performance, where safety doesn't require hiding, where connection doesn't require splitting yourself in two. You can be whole, you can be present, you can be you. And that, all of that, exactly as you are, is more than enough. So how do you actually move from where you are to where you want to be? How do you shift from exhausting performance to effortless presence? It helps to understand that this isn't a switch you flip. It's a journey. And like any journey, it has stages, recognizable landmarks that tell you where you are and what's coming next. These aren't rigid boxes. You don't graduate from one and never return. They're fluid. They spiral. You'll move through them and circle back and move through them again at deeper levels. But knowing where you are helps you know what you need. So let's map it out. The 4 stages of magnetic presence, from performance to integration, from trying to being. Stage 1, the performer. This is where most people live, where you've been living. Every interaction is calculated. You rehearse conversations before they happen. You monitor reactions while they're happening. You replay them afterwards, analyzing every word, every gesture, every micro-expression on the other person's face. You walk into a job interview and your heart is racing. Not just because you want the job, but because you're about to be evaluated. Your mind floods with calculations. Sit up straight. Make eye contact, but not too much. Smile, but not too widely. Answer confidently, but don't seem arrogant. Be personable, but professional. Show enthusiasm, but don't seem desperate. The entire interview, you're not actually present. You're watching yourself from the outside, monitoring your performance, adjusting in real time based on their reactions. And when it's over, you have no idea if you connected with them. You were too busy managing your image to notice whether there was actual rapport. Or you're on a first date. You picked your outfit carefully. You rehearsed stories you might tell. You've calculated what makes you seem interesting without seeming try-hard. And the whole evening, there's this split. Part of you is sitting across from them. Part of you is floating above the table, watching, evaluating, adjusting. Did that joke land? Are you talking too much? Are they attracted to you? Should you lean in, or is that too forward? Every moment is measured. Every word is weighed. And by the end of the night, you're exhausted. Because you've been running parallel processing the entire time, trying to be present while simultaneously judging your own performance. Social situations drain you completely. A party that lasts 3 hours feels like it lasted 10 because you've been vigilant the entire time. Monitoring your body language, controlling your voice, making sure your face is doing the right things, calculating when to speak and what to say, and how to say it. And you measure success entirely by external validation. Did they laugh at your jokes? Did they seem interested when you spoke? Did anyone seek you out for conversation? Do they like you? Attraction feels like a test, and you feel like you're constantly failing it. Because no matter how well you perform, it never quite feels like enough. There's always someone else who seems more natural, more charismatic, more effortlessly magnetic, and you wonder what they have that you don't. This is stage 1, and it's exhausting, but it's also where awareness begins, because the exhaustion eventually becomes too much to ignore. Stage 2, the aware struggler. Something shifts. You start noticing the performance for what it is. You're in the middle of telling a story, and you suddenly catch yourself. You realize you're not actually sharing this story. You're performing it. You're not speaking from memory or emotion. You're calculating effect. And the moment you notice, everything changes. You see the cage you've been living in. You start having these moments, brief windows where you forget to monitor yourself and just exist. Maybe you're talking to a friend and they say something that genuinely surprises you, and you laugh, really laugh, without thinking about whether it's an attractive laugh. And for 3 seconds, you're just there, present, whole, not split. And you notice that these moments feel different, better, lighter, more connected. There's an ease to them that the performance never has, a quality of genuine contact that's been missing from most of your interactions, but you can't sustain it yet. The old patterns are too strong. You slip back into performance mode without realizing it. You catch yourself mid-conversation and realize you've been monitoring again. You're oscillating. Presence, then performance. Awareness, then automatic pattern. Back and forth. Back and forth. This stage is uncomfortable. Maybe the most uncomfortable. Because you see the cage, but you don't yet know how to walk out of it. You know what presence feels like now. You've tasted it. But you can't access it at will. You can't turn off the performance on command. The job interview now is strange. Part of you is still performing, still calculating, still trying to say the right things. But another part of you is watching that performance with new eyes, seeing how effortful it is, how disconnected. And you wonder if there's another way, but you're not ready to risk it yet. The stakes feel too high. On the date, you catch yourself rehearsing. You notice the split. And for a moment, you drop back into presence. You actually listen to what they're saying. You respond from what's true instead of what sounds good. And it feels amazing, real, alive. But then fear kicks in. What if they don't like the real you? And you slip back into performance mode, calculating again, monitoring again. In the group setting, you notice how exhausting the vigilance is. You see that most of your anxiety is self-created, that you're the one putting yourself under surveillance. And you have moments where you just let that go, where you're quiet because you have nothing to say and you're okay with that, where you speak because you're genuinely curious, not because you're trying to contribute. These moments are revelations, but they're inconsistent. You can't control them. You can't predict them. And that's frustrating, because now you know there's a better way. You've experienced it, but you don't yet have reliable access to it. This is stage 2. The awareness is there. The tools aren't yet, but you're getting closer. Stage 3. The practicing presence. Now something new happens. You begin deliberately choosing presence over performance. You develop tools, simple practices that bring you back to your body when you notice the split. A breath, a sensation, a moment of noticing without judgment, and you start using them, not perfectly, not every time, but more and more. You decide to try something different in the interview. When you notice yourself performing, you pause, just for a second. You feel your feet on the ground. You take a breath, and then you answer from what's actually true. I'm nervous, you might say, or I don't know the answer to that, but here's how I'd figure it out. And something surprising happens. The room relaxes. The interviewer relaxes, because you just did something rare. You were real. On the date, you make a choice. Instead of trying to impress them, you're going to be genuinely curious about them. You're going to listen, not to find openings for your rehearsed stories, but to actually understand who they are. And when they ask about you, you're going to tell them something true. Not polished, not strategic, just true. Maybe your voice shakes a little. Maybe you're less smooth than you would have been in performance mode. But something different is happening. They're leaning in. They're engaged, not with your performance, with you. In the group, you practice being comfortable with silence, with not always having something clever to contribute, with asking questions you're genuinely curious about instead of making statements you think will impress people. And you notice that some people respond to this. Not everyone, but the ones who matter. The ones who are also tired of performance and hungry for something real. You're still effortful here. Presence doesn't come automatically yet. But the effort is different now. It's not the effort of doing. It's the effort of undoing, of releasing the grip, of letting go of control, of trusting that who you are is enough without the performance. Attraction starts feeling less like achievement and more like permission, like you're giving yourself permission to be yourself. And that permission is what's actually magnetic. Not because you've mastered some technique, but because permission is rare, authenticity is rare, and people are drawn to rare things. This is stage 3. You're practicing, building capacity, training your nervous system to feel safe without the performance. It's not consistent yet, but it's becoming more familiar, more accessible. Stage 4, the integrated self. This is the destination, not perfection, not the end of all difficulty, but integration, wholeness, presence as your default state. You walk into the interview and you're nervous, but the nervousness isn't a problem anymore. It doesn't trigger the performance. You're just nervous, a human being in a moment that matters. And you let that be true. You answer questions honestly. You admit when you don't know something. You're interested in whether this job is right for you, not just whether they'll choose you. And there's a quality to your presence that's hard to define, but impossible to miss. A groundedness, a realness, an ease that comes from not having anything to prove. On the date, you're fully there, not calculating, not monitoring, just there, listening, speaking, responding. You say things that are true even if they're not impressive. You're quiet when you don't have anything to add. You disagree when you disagree. And the conversation flows because it's real. Two people actually meeting, not two performances interacting. If there's chemistry, it's genuine. If there isn't, that's okay too. You're not trying to manufacture attraction anymore. You're letting it emerge naturally, or not at all. In the group, you move through the room with quiet confidence, not the performed confidence of stage one, the real confidence that comes from being at home in yourself. You're comfortable with people and comfortable alone. Engaged when you're engaged. Withdrawn when you need to be. And people are drawn to you. Not everyone, but your people. The ones who recognize the frequency of someone who's genuinely present. You're interested in others without needing them to be interested in you. You speak your truth without needing validation. You're okay with silence, with disagreement, with being misunderstood. Because your worth isn't on the line anymore. You know who you are, and that knowing is enough. Attraction is no longer something you seek. It's something that happens naturally, because you're fully inhabiting yourself. And that quality of being genuinely at home in your own skin is the rarest, most magnetic thing a person can radiate. This is stage 4. Integration, presence as default, the end of the performance and the beginning of everything real. You don't arrive here overnight, but you will arrive, step by step, moment by moment, choosing presence over performance until presence becomes who you are. But knowing the stages isn't enough. You need a tool, something practical, something you can use right now, in the moment, when you catch yourself performing. This is the core method, the thing that will change everything if you actually use it. It's called the 3-second reset. And it's exactly what it sounds like. 3 seconds. That's all it takes to interrupt the pattern and bring yourself back to presence. Not 3 minutes, not 3 hours of meditation. 3 seconds. Let me show you how it works. Second one. Notice the split, the moment you catch yourself monitoring, evaluating, or rehearsing. Simply acknowledge it. That's it. Just notice. I'm in performance mode. Or, I'm watching myself right now. Or, I'm not actually here. You don't need to judge it. You don't need to make it wrong. You just need to see it. Because the noticing itself creates space. It creates a gap between the impulse to perform and the behavior of performing. And in that gap, choice becomes possible. Most of the time, you're running on automatic. The performance happens before you even realize it's happening. But the moment you notice, the moment you catch yourself mid-calculation, the automatic pattern loses some of its power. It's like waking up inside a dream. Suddenly you realize you're dreaming, and that realization changes everything. You're still in the dream, but now you have agency. Now you can choose. This is the first second. Just noticing. I'm doing it again. I'm performing. No judgment, just awareness. Curiosity even. Oh, there it is. The pattern. Second 2. Drop into sensation. Now shift your attention from your thoughts to your direct sensory experience. This is the key. This is what actually breaks the spell. Your performance lives in your head. in thoughts, in evaluation, in the imagined judgment of others. But your body is always here, always present, always in direct contact with reality. So drop into it. Feel your feet on the ground. Actually feel them, the pressure, the contact, the weight of your body being held by the earth. Notice the temperature of your breath. Is it cool as it enters your nose? Warm as it leaves? Just notice. Don't change it. Just feel it. Hear the actual sounds in the room. Not your thoughts about the sounds themselves, the hum of conversation, the clink of glasses, the ambient noise that's always there, but you rarely actually hear because you're too busy with internal commentary. This isn't meditation. This isn't some complicated spiritual practice. This is just presence. You're anchoring yourself in what's real and immediate, rather than the imagined evaluation happening in your head. And here's what's important. You can't be in your head and in your body at the same time. It's physically impossible. When you drop into sensation, the monitoring quiets. The evaluation stops, because all your attention is engaged with direct experience. This is the second, coming back to your body, coming back to what's real. Second 3, choose one true thing from this grounded place, from presence rather than performance. Let yourself respond, or speak, or move based on what's actually true for you in this moment. Not what will impress them, not what will make you seem interesting or attractive or valuable. What's true? It might be, I don't know what to say to that. It might be a genuine question you're curious about. It might be comfortable silence because you have nothing to add right now. It might be, actually, I disagree with that. It might be, I'm nervous. It might be laughter that's spontaneous instead of strategic. Whatever emerges from presence rather than strategy, that's what you choose. That's what you offer. This is the third second. Speaking from your center. Acting from truth rather than calculation. 3 seconds total. Notice. Drop into sensation. Choose truth. Let me show you what this looks like in real situations. You're at a networking event. You're talking to someone, and you're in the middle of a story you've told before. A story that usually gets a good reaction. But halfway through, you catch yourself. You realize you're not actually sharing this story. You're performing it. Your voice has that practiced quality. Your gestures are rehearsed. You're not here. You're watching yourself tell the story, calculating whether it's landing. Second 1, you notice, I'm performing right now. Second 2, you feel your feet on the ground. You take a breath. You feel the weight of your body, your back. Second 3, you make a choice. You stop mid-sentence and say, actually, let me back up. What I really want to say is, and then you speak from what's actually true. Maybe the real reason you're telling this story. Maybe how you actually feel about the experience. Maybe something messier and less polished, but infinitely more real. And watch what happens. The other person leans in. Their eyes change. Their body language shifts. Because something real is happening now. Not a performance. Contact. Connection. The thing you were trying to achieve through the performance is happening now that you've dropped it. Or you're on a date. And you're monitoring yourself constantly. Is your posture attractive? Are you smiling enough? Do they seem interested? Should you lean forward? Is this angle flattering? The entire time you're not actually listening to what they're saying. You're watching yourself. You're so busy managing your image that you're not present for the actual interaction. Second 1, you notice. I'm not here. I'm watching myself. Second 2, you come back to sensation. the taste of your drink, the feeling of the chair beneath you, the temperature of the room. You're grounded again. Second 3. You let yourself respond to what they actually said, rather than what you planned to say next. They tell you something that's genuinely funny, and you laugh. Not a calculated laugh designed to seem fun. A real laugh, because it was actually funny, and the tension in your body dissolves. You're here now, present, available, and they feel it. The conversation shifts, it deepens, because both of you are actually there now, or you're in a group. Everyone's talking and you're silent, and in your head, you're spiraling. I seem boring. I should say something. I need to contribute. They probably think I'm awkward. You're rehearsing lines, calculating the perfect moment to interject, wondering if your silence is making you invisible. Second 1. You catch the spiral. I'm doing it. I'm performing engagement that isn't real. Second 2. You settle into your body. You feel yourself breathing. You notice you're actually interested in what someone is saying. You're curious. You want to know more. Second 3. You ask a question you're genuinely curious about. Not to seem engaged, because you actually are engaged. Or you stay quiet, because you have nothing to add right now, and you're okay with that. You're not performing presence. You're choosing it when it's real. And here's what you discover. No one notices your silence the way you thought they would. Or if they do, it doesn't matter. Because you're not radiating anxiety anymore. You're radiating ease. And ease is magnetic in ways that forced contribution never is. This is the method. 3 seconds. Notice, ground, choose truth. And the beauty of it is this. It's always available. You don't need special circumstances. You don't need to wait until you're alone or calm or in the right mood. The moment you notice you're performing, you can reset. Right there. Mid-conversation. Mid-sentence, even. The more you practice this, the less you'll need it. Because your nervous system will start to learn that presence is safe, that you don't need the performance to be accepted, that the real you is actually more magnetic than any version you could construct. At first, you'll catch yourself after the fact. You'll realize an hour later that you spent the whole evening in performance mode. That's okay. The awareness is growing. Then you'll catch yourself during. You'll notice mid-interaction that you're performing. That's progress. Now you can reset in real time. Eventually, you'll catch yourself before. You'll feel the impulse to perform, and you'll choose presence instead. You'll notice the urge to monitor, and you'll drop into your body before the pattern fully activates. And finally, presence will become your default. You won't need the reset because you won't be leaving presence in the first place. The performance will feel like the strange state, not the normal one. But that comes later. Right now, you just need to practice the 3 seconds, over and over. In every situation where you notice yourself performing, notice, ground, choose truth. 3 seconds that will change your life. Not because they're complicated, because they're simple. Simple enough to actually use. Simple enough to remember in the moment when it matters. This is your tool. This is how you interrupt the pattern. This is how you come home to yourself again and again until being home becomes natural. 3 seconds. That's all you need. The 3-second reset is your foundation. But transformation doesn't happen in isolation. You need supporting practices, tools that deepen your capacity for presence and expand your range. Think of these as training wheels, not permanent fixtures, but temporary support while your nervous system learns a new way of being. The mirror practice. Every morning, spend 2 minutes looking at yourself in the mirror, not preparing for the day, not checking your appearance, just meeting your own gaze with neutral, compassionate attention. This sounds simple. It's not. Most people can't do this for more than 10 seconds without looking away or adjusting something. They fix their hair, they practice a smile, they check an angle, they turn it into preparation instead of presence. But that's not what this is. This is about being with yourself, without evaluation, without judgment, without performing even for your own eyes. Just look, meet your own gaze, see yourself, not as an object to be improved, as a person to be known. You'll notice discomfort. That's the point. That discomfort reveals how rarely you're actually with yourself without evaluation, how rarely you look at yourself without immediately cataloguing what needs to be fixed or improved or hidden. But if you stay with it, if you keep meeting your own eyes without looking away, something shifts, the discomfort softens, a kind of compassion emerges. You're not your enemy, you're not your project, you're just you, a human being, worthy of neutral, kind attention. This practice trains you to be comfortable under observation, starting with your own. Because if you can't be present with yourself, if you can't meet your own gaze without performing, how can you expect to be present with others? 2 minutes. Every morning. No evaluation, no adjustment, just presence. The curious observer. In social situations, practice shifting your focus. Instead of, what do they think of me? Ask, what's happening in this room? Become genuinely interested in the dynamics, the energy, the unspoken currents. Notice who's dominating the conversation and who's withdrawn. Notice who seems comfortable and who seems anxious. Wonder what everyone's carrying beneath the surface. This shift is radical, because when you're focused on what others think of you, you're trapped in your own head. You're broadcasting need, seeking validation. And people feel that. It creates a kind of pressure in the interaction. But when you shift to curiosity, when you become genuinely interested in others rather than worried about yourself, everything changes. You're no longer self-conscious. You're other-aware. And that quality, that genuine interest in the room rather than yourself, is profoundly attractive. Because most people are so trapped in their own performance that they never actually see anyone else. So when someone looks at them with genuine curiosity, with real interest, it's disarming. It's magnetic. You're no longer taking from the room. You're giving attention. And attention, real attention, is the most valuable thing you can offer. Try it. Next time you're in a group, stop monitoring yourself. Start noticing everyone else. Not judging them, just observing with curiosity. What's the energy here? What's not being said? Who needs to be seen? You'll find that when you stop performing, you start connecting, because connection requires seeing, and you can't see when you're too busy being seen. The permission practice. Here's a practice that will change everything. Give yourself explicit permission to be exactly as you are in each moment. Tired? You're allowed to be tired. Not witty right now? That's fine. You don't have to be on. Don't have an opinion on something everyone's discussing. You're not required to manufacture one. Quiet because you have nothing to say. That's acceptable. This isn't resignation. This isn't giving up. This is sovereignty. You're claiming the right to take up space as you are, rather than as you should be. Most of the time, you're running a constant internal evaluation, checking yourself against some imagined standard, wondering if you're being enough. interesting enough, engaging enough, present enough. But what if you gave yourself permission to just be? To show up as you are, in whatever state you're in, without apologizing for it. This is one of the most powerful practices you can develop, because when you give yourself permission, you stop radiating that low-level anxiety that comes from trying to be something you're not. You relax, you settle, you become more yourself. And people sense this permission. It gives them permission, too, to relax, to be themselves, to stop performing for you because you're clearly not performing for them. Try it. Next time you walk into a social situation and you're tired or quiet or just not feeling it, instead of trying to force energy you don't have, give yourself permission to be exactly as you are. I'm allowed to be quiet tonight. I'm allowed to be tired. I don't have to be anything other than what I am. Watch how the room responds, how the pressure dissolves, how people actually move toward you instead of away because your ease gives them permission for their own. The contrast awareness. Start paying attention to the felt sense of performance versus presence. There's a somatic difference, a difference you can feel in your body. Performance has a quality of tension, of fragmentation, of vigilance. Your shoulders are tight, your breathing is shallow. There's a kind of background noise in your nervous system, a constant low-level activation that never quite settles. Presence feels different, integrated, easeful, grounded. Your breathing deepens, your shoulders drop. There's a quality of being here, of being home in your body, that performance never has. The more you attune to this difference, the more you notice how each state actually feels, the more naturally you'll choose presence, not because you should, but because your body will start to recognize that it simply feels better. Your nervous system is always seeking safety and ease. Once it learns that presence feels better than performance, it will start choosing presence automatically. You won't have to force it. Your body will move toward it the way it moves toward warmth or comfort or rest. So pay attention. When you notice yourself performing, pause. Feel what that's like in your body, the tension, the fragmentation, the effort. Then reset. Drop into presence. And feel that. The ease, the integration, the relief. Your body is learning. Give it the data it needs to choose differently. The truth practice. Once a day, say one true thing that feels slightly risky. Not cruel, not inappropriate, but real. I don't actually enjoy these kinds of events. I'm not sure I agree with that. I feel nervous right now. I have no idea what to say. I'm really tired today. These small truths train you to speak from your center rather than your strategy. They build your capacity for authenticity. They show you repeatedly that honesty is almost always received better than performance. Most of your anxiety around social situations comes from the belief that you need to manage people's perceptions, that you need to hide certain truths to be acceptable. But what if the opposite is true? What if the truths you're hiding are exactly what would create connection? Start small. One truth per day. Something that feels slightly uncomfortable to say, but isn't going to blow up your life. And notice what happens. Notice how people respond. Notice how you feel afterwards. You'll find that most of the time, your honesty lands well. People appreciate it. They lean in. They reciprocate with their own truths, because you just gave them permission to be real, too. And on the rare occasions when it doesn't land well, you've learned something valuable. You've learned that this person or this environment isn't safe for your authenticity. And that's useful information. The truth practice builds your courage, your capacity for realness, your trust that you can be yourself and survive it. The celebration list. Your brain is wired to remember failures and threats. It's a survival mechanism. But it also means you're constantly collecting evidence that performance is necessary and presence is risky. You need to counteract this, actively, intentionally. Keep a running note on your phone. Every time you were genuinely present and it went well, write it down. The conversation that flowed when you stopped trying. The joke that landed because it was spontaneous, not rehearsed. The connection that happened when you admitted you didn't know something. The moment someone said, "Thank you for being real," or "I appreciate your honesty," or "I feel like I can actually talk to you." These moments are happening more than you realize. But your brain isn't tracking them. It's too busy cataloging every awkward silence and every moment you felt you failed. So you have to train it. Give it evidence. Show it repeatedly that presence works, that authenticity creates connection, that the thing you're afraid of, being yourself, is actually what draws people in. Read this list regularly, especially before social situations where you feel anxious. Remind your nervous system. Presence is safe. Presence works. Presence is what actually creates the connection you're seeking. None of these practices are about becoming a different person. They're about becoming more consistently yourself, about closing the gap between your internal experience and external expression. The mirror practice teaches you to be with yourself. The curious observer moves your focus outward. The permission practice gives you sovereignty. The contrast awareness trains your nervous system. The truth practice builds courage. The celebration list rewires your brain. Together, they create an environment in which transformation happens organically. Not through force, through support, through gentle, consistent practice that shows your system it's safe to let go of the performance. The tools aren't the transformation. They're the scaffolding that holds you while the transformation happens. Use them, trust them, and watch how they change you without you having to try. But tools and practices only take you so far. If you want presence to become your natural state, rather than something you have to work to access, you need to build a life that supports it. This is about foundations, the unglamorous, unsexy work of creating an environment where transformation becomes inevitable rather than aspirational. Environment design. Your physical and digital spaces shape your nervous system. You can't ignore this. You can't practice presence for 10 minutes a day and then spend the rest of your time in environments that trigger performance mode. Start with your digital environment, your social media feeds, the accounts you follow, the content you consume. Be ruthless here. Unfollow accounts that make you feel inadequate, that trigger comparison, that leave you feeling like you're not enough. It doesn't matter if they're inspiring to other people. What matters is how they affect your nervous system. Follow people who inspire authenticity rather than aspiration. People who share their struggles, not just their highlights. People who are real, messy, human. People whose presence gives you permission for your own. Curate your feed like you curate your physical space. Only allow in what supports the person you're becoming. And your physical space matters too. Create environments that calm rather than stimulate. Reduce clutter, reduce noise, reduce the visual chaos that keeps your nervous system in low-level activation. You don't need minimalism. You need spaces that let you breathe, that let you settle, that don't require constant vigilance or decision-making or management. Your environment is either supporting your presence or undermining it. There's no neutral. Pay attention to how you feel in different spaces. Which rooms in your home let you relax? Which spaces make you tense? Adjust accordingly. Relationship auditing. Now look at your relationships. This is harder, more vulnerable, but essential. Are there people around whom you can never quite relax? Where you're always performing? Where you have to monitor yourself constantly to maintain the relationship? Notice this. Without judgment, just notice. Some relationships are built on a false version of you, on the performance, and maintaining them requires betraying your authenticity, requires exiling parts of yourself to keep the connection intact. This isn't about cutting everyone off. This isn't about burning bridges. But it is about recognizing that some relationships are costing you more than they're giving you, and that cost is paid in the currency of your authenticity. You have limited energy, limited capacity. Every relationship that requires performance is draining resources that could be going toward relationships where you can actually be yourself. So evaluate. Who can you be real with? Who gives you permission to be messy, uncertain, human? Who sees you and loves you anyway? Invest there. Deepen there. Give your best energy to the relationships that don't require you to be anything other than what you are, and the relationships where you're always performing. You don't necessarily have to end them, but you can change them. You can start showing up more authentically and see what happens. Some will adapt, some won't. Both outcomes give you information. The goal isn't to only have relationships where you are completely unfiltered. The goal is to have enough relationships where you can be real that you're not starving for authenticity. Energy management. Presence requires nervous system capacity. This is non-negotiable. If you are chronically depleted, sleep-deprived, nutritionally deficient, overscheduled, you won't have the bandwidth for anything beyond survival mode. Your brain will default to the oldest, most automatic patterns, which means performance, which means hiding, which means doing whatever keeps you safe in the short term, even if it's hurting you in the long term. So the basics matter, more than you want them to. 7 to 8 hours of sleep. Not negotiable. Your nervous system repairs during sleep. Your brain consolidates learning during sleep. You cannot sustain presence without adequate rest. Regular movement. Your body needs to discharge stress, to release the tension that builds up from daily activation. Walk, run, dance, lift, yoga, whatever works for you, but move, real food. Your brain is an organ. It requires nutrients to function. You can't think clearly, regulate emotions, or access presence when you're running on processed food and caffeine. Time without screens. Your nervous system needs breaks from stimulation, from input, from the constant demand for attention and response. Build in screen-free time, daily, not as punishment, as restoration. These aren't optional if you want sustainable presence. They're foundational. Basic biology isn't glamorous, but it's what makes everything else possible. You can't transcend your body. You can't override your biology. You have to work with it. And that means taking care of the physical vessel that houses your consciousness. Practice containers. Create low-stakes environments where you can practice presence without high consequences. Join a group where you don't know anyone and have no reputation to uphold. A book club, a hiking group, a class. Somewhere you can show up as yourself without the weight of people's expectations. Take an improv class where awkwardness is expected, where the whole point is to be spontaneous and messy and unpolished, where performance is impossible because everything's made up on the spot. Volunteer somewhere that has nothing to do with your professional identity, where your value isn't tied to your expertise or your achievements, where you're just a person showing up to help. These containers give you permission to experiment, to practice being present without the stakes that usually trigger performance mode, to build the muscle of authenticity in spaces where it feels safer. And then, gradually, you can bring that practice into higher stakes environments, into your work, into your important relationships, into the places where you've been performing for years. But you need the practice space first, the low-pressure environment where you can stumble and it doesn't matter, where you can be awkward and it's expected, where you can be yourself and there's nothing on the line. Solitude rituals. You cannot be present with others if you're not comfortable being present with yourself. Build regular solitude into your life. Not just being alone, but being alone without distraction. No phone, no podcast, no music, no book, no input at all. Just you, with your own thoughts, your own sensations, your own unedited experience. This is where you meet yourself beneath the performance, where you remember what your actual internal experience feels like without the constant overlay of external stimulation. Most people can't do this. They fill every moment with input, with distraction, with something to keep them from being alone with themselves. But that avoidance is costing you, because if you can't be with yourself, you'll never be fully present with anyone else. You'll always be running from something, always needing distraction, always performing to avoid the discomfort of simply being. Start small, 10 minutes, just sitting. No agenda, no goal, just being with yourself. You'll notice discomfort, restlessness, the urge to check your phone, the urge to do something, anything, other than just sit with yourself. That's the practice. Staying, not fleeing. Learning that you can be with yourself without distraction and survive it. This is where authenticity is born. In the quiet, in the stillness, in the moments when you're not performing for anyone, not even yourself. Progress metrics. Redefine how you measure success, because right now, you're probably measuring the wrong things. Instead of, did I make a good impression? Ask, was I present? Instead of, did they like me? Ask, did I honor my truth? Instead of, did I say the right thing? Ask, did I speak from my center? Track moments of courage rather than moments of approval. Count the times you were authentic, not the times you were impressive. Your brain will optimize for whatever you measure. Right now, it's optimizing for external validation, for performance, for getting it right. But if you change the metrics, if you start measuring presence, authenticity, courage, your brain will start optimizing for those instead. Keep a daily log, just a sentence or two. Today I was present in this conversation. Today I spoke one truth that felt risky. Today I chose authenticity over impression management. You're training your attention, teaching your brain what matters, rewiring the reward system from external approval to internal alignment. This isn't about never caring what others think. It's about caring more about whether you're being true to yourself, about prioritizing internal integrity over external validation. The metrics you track determine the person you become. Choose carefully. The integration period. Understand this. Deep change doesn't happen linearly. You won't steadily improve week after week until you've achieved perfect presence. You'll have periods of expansion, where presence feels natural, where you're showing up authentically and it's working and you feel like you've finally figured it out. And then you'll contract. You'll regress to old patterns. You'll find yourself performing again, monitoring again, hiding again. And you'll feel like you've failed, like you've lost all your progress. This isn't failure. This is integration. Your nervous system needs time to recalibrate, to test the new way against the old way, to make sure the new patterns are actually safer than the familiar ones. The contraction isn't regression, it's consolidation. Your system is integrating what you've learned, making it deeper, more stable, more permanent. Be patient with yourself. The spiral always moves upward, even when it feels like you're circling back. You're not returning to where you started. You're revisiting old territory with new awareness, and that awareness changes everything. Trust the process. Trust the timeline. Trust that transformation is happening even when you can't see it, especially when you can't see it. These foundations aren't sexy. They won't give you overnight transformation, but they create the conditions in which transformation becomes inevitable. You're not building a skill set. You're building a life that naturally generates the state you're seeking, a life where presence is the default, not the exception, where authenticity is normal, not heroic. This is how lasting change happens, not through willpower, through design, through creating an environment where being yourself is the path of least resistance. Build the foundations, the rest will follow. But maybe you're still skeptical. Maybe part of you is thinking this sounds good in theory, but you need something more concrete, something that explains why this actually works. So let's talk about the science, not to prove anything, but to help your logical mind relax into the process, to show you that what you've been experiencing isn't imagined. It's biology, the default mode network. Your brain has different networks that activate depending on what you're doing. When you're performing, when you're monitoring yourself, calculating how others perceive you, evaluating your words before you speak them, you're activating what neuroscientists call the default mode network. This is the system responsible for self-referential thinking, for simulating social scenarios, for imagining how you appear to others. And when you're in performance mode, this network goes into overdrive. You're constantly running simulations. If I say this, they'll think that. If I stand this way, I'll appear more confident. They're probably judging me right now. It's energy intensive. It creates that experience of being split. Part of you in the interaction, part of you floating above it, watching, evaluating, predicting. Brain scans show this clearly. When people are self-conscious, the medial prefrontal cortex lights up like a Christmas tree. That's the region associated with thinking about yourself, with self-evaluation, with social anxiety. But when you drop into presence, when you stop monitoring and just engage with what's actually happening, this network quiets. You access a different system entirely. The task-positive network. The network associated with focus, direct engagement, flow. This is the neuroscience of what you've been feeling. The exhaustion of performance isn't psychological, it's neurological. You're running an energy-intensive brain network constantly. And the relief of presence? That's your brain shifting into a more efficient, more engaged mode of operation. Presence isn't just a feeling. It's a measurable shift in brain activity, from self-referential simulation to direct engagement, from imagining to experiencing. Mirror neurons and authenticity. Here's something most people don't know. Humans have specialized neurons called mirror neurons. These neurons fire both when you perform an action and when you observe someone else performing that action. They're the basis of empathy, of social learning, of our ability to sense what others are feeling. And they're always working, always picking up signals from the people around you. When you're anxious, when you're performing, monitoring, managing your image, your nervous system is in a state of activation. And other people's mirror neurons detect that. They feel your anxiety. Not consciously, necessarily. They can't articulate what's off, but they sense it. Something in the interaction feels slightly tense, slightly guarded, slightly inauthentic. This is what you've been sensing your whole life. Not that people are judging your words or your appearance, but that they're picking up on your internal state, on the fragmentation, on the performance. When you're genuinely present and at ease, their mirror neurons detect that too. They feel your calm, your groundedness, your availability for real connection, and they move toward it. Because calm is contagious, ease is contagious, presence is contagious. Attraction isn't about saying the right things. It's not about having the perfect appearance or the most interesting stories. It's about radiating a nervous system state that others want to be around. You're always broadcasting, always transmitting your internal state through micro-expressions, through vocal tone, through the subtle signals that mirror neurons evolved to detect. You can't hide it. You can't fake it. Your nervous system tells the truth even when your words don't. This is why performance doesn't work, because you're trying to control the content, the words, the gestures, the expressions, while broadcasting anxiety through channels you can't consciously control. And people feel the mismatch. They sense that something's off. But when you're actually present, when you're actually at ease, you don't have to manage anything. Your nervous system broadcasts safety, connection, availability, and people's mirror neurons respond to that signal instinctively. The spotlight effect? Here's a study that will change how you think about social situations. Researchers had participants wear embarrassing t-shirts, shirts with images or slogans designed to be noticed. Then they sent them into rooms full of people. Afterwards, they asked the participants, "What percentage of people in the room do you think noticed your shirt?" The average answer? 50%. Half the room. The actual number? 23%. Less than a quarter. People consistently overestimate how much attention others are paying to them. This is called the spotlight effect. You believe you're under constant observation, that everyone's noticing your mistakes, your awkwardness, your flaws. But the truth is, most people are too busy worrying about themselves to pay that much attention to you. Your performance is mostly for an audience that isn't watching nearly as closely as you think. Think about that. All the monitoring, all the vigilance, all the careful management of your image. Most of it is addressing a problem that doesn't exist at the scale you imagine. The freedom comes from realizing this. Your hypervigilance is solving an imagined problem. People aren't scrutinizing you the way you're scrutinizing yourself. They're dealing with their own internal experience, their own insecurities, their own performance. You can relax. The spotlight you feel isn't real, or at least it's far dimmer than you think. Oxytocin and vulnerability. When you share something authentic, when you speak from your actual experience, when you reveal something true and vulnerable, something biological happens. Your brain releases oxytocin, the bonding hormone, the neurochemical associated with trust, intimacy, connection. And here's what's remarkable. The listener's brain releases oxytocin too. Vulnerability isn't just emotionally connecting. It's biochemically connecting. You're triggering ancient neurochemistry designed to build trust and strengthen social bonds. This is why vulnerability creates connection more effectively than impressive credentials or witty banter. It's not that impressive things don't matter. It's that they don't activate the bonding system the way authentic self-disclosure does. Your nervous system evolved to bond through shared truth, through mutual vulnerability, through the experience of being seen and seeing someone else, not through performance, not through carefully managed presentations of your best self. When you speak from your actual experience, when you say, "I'm nervous," or "I don't know," or "this is hard for me," you're activating neurochemistry that literally creates connection. You're giving the other person's brain the signal that it's safe to bond, to trust, to open, and they reciprocate. Not always, not with everyone, but far more often than you think, because their nervous system is responding to the oxytocin signal, to the invitation for real connection, cognitive load and attraction. When you're monitoring yourself, when you're running that constant evaluation of how you're coming across, you're using significant cognitive resources, your working memory, your attention, your processing power, and that leaves less bandwidth for actual engagement. Studies show that cognitive load reduces your ability to read social cues, to respond authentically, to pick up on the subtle signals that tell you how the other person is actually feeling. You're so busy watching yourself that you can't see them. People unconsciously sense when someone is mentally elsewhere. Even if you're physically present, even if you're nodding and making eye contact, they can feel that you're not fully there. That part of your attention is diverted, that you're not completely available. Presence isn't a virtue. It's not something you do to be a good person. It's an evolutionary signal. It tells others, "I'm available for connection. I have the capacity to actually be with you. I'm not running background programs that are pulling my attention away." And that signal, that availability, is profoundly attractive. Because it's rare. Because most people are so fragmented, so split between being and monitoring, that genuine availability stands out. The Prattfall effect. Here's a study that will relieve you. Researchers found that minor mistakes and vulnerabilities actually increase likability. But, and this is important, only for people who are already perceived as competent. They called this the Prattfall effect. A small stumble, a moment of awkwardness, a minor imperfection. These things make you more likable, not less. Because perfection creates distance. Perfection is hard to relate to. But someone who's capable and also human? Someone who's impressive but also makes mistakes? That's approachable. That's real. Your flaws aren't obstacles to attraction. They're bridges. The mistakes you're afraid to make are often what make you relatable and real. What let people see themselves in you. What give them permission to be imperfect, too. This doesn't mean you should try to be awkward. That would just be another performance. But it does mean you can stop trying so hard to be perfect. Stop hiding every flaw. Stop managing every mistake. The things you think are disqualifying you are actually humanizing you. Nervous system regulation. Your autonomic nervous system has 3 main states. Understanding them changes everything. Ventral vagal, safe and social. This is the state of openness, connection, playfulness. Your face is mobile. Your voice has prosody. You're available for relationship. This is where attraction happens. Sympathetic, fight or flight. This is the state of performance, of vigilance, of protection. Your body is tense. Your face is controlled. You're scanning for threat. This is where anxiety lives. Dorsal vagal, shut down. This is the state of collapse, of withdrawal, of giving up. You're numb, disconnected, unavailable. When you're performing, you're often in sympathetic activation. Your nervous system perceives social evaluation as threat. So it mobilizes. It prepares to fight or flee, and you stay in that state of vigilance, of tension, of readiness. But true attraction emerges when both people are in ventral vagal, when both nervous systems have signaled to each other, it's safe here. You can relax, you can open, you can connect. You can't force someone else into that state. But you can regulate your own nervous system. And when you do, when you drop from sympathetic into ventral vagal, from performance into presence, you're sending a biological signal. You're inviting their nervous system to match yours. This is co-regulation. This is how connection actually works. Not through words, through nervous system states that communicate safety and availability beneath the level of conscious awareness. The science isn't a prescription, it's validation. Your experience isn't imagined. The exhaustion of performance? That's your default mode network burning energy on self-referential processing. The relief of presence? That's your brain shifting into task-positive mode. The magnetic quality of authenticity? That's mirror neurons detecting a safe nervous system state and oxytocin creating bonds through vulnerability. Understanding the mechanism doesn't create the change, but it can help you trust the process when your conditioning tells you to doubt it. When your old patterns whisper that you need to perform to be safe. When you're tempted to go back to what's familiar. You can point to the science. You can remind yourself, this isn't philosophy. This is biology. This is how human connection actually works at the neurological level. And that knowledge, that grounding, can give you the courage to keep choosing presence, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it feels risky, even when every old pattern is screaming at you to perform. The science has your back. Trust it. But understanding the science is one thing. Applying it when life gets real is another. Because theory is useless if it collapses under pressure. And pressure is where you'll be tested, where your old patterns will fight hardest to reassert themselves, where performance mode will feel like the only way to survive. So let's talk about how these principles hold when the stakes are high, when your heart is racing, when everything in you is screaming to perform. The high-stakes presentation. You're about to present to the board, or give a speech, or pitch an idea to people who matter, people whose opinions carry weight, people who can say yes or no to something you care about. Your heart is racing. Your hands might be shaking. Your mind is offering 1,000 ways this could go wrong. Every mistake you've ever made is suddenly replaying in your head, and the urge to perform, to be polished, confident, impressive, is overwhelming. This is where the reset matters most. Second one, notice you're in fight or flight. My nervous system thinks this is a threat. I'm in sympathetic activation. Just naming it creates space. Second two, ground through sensation. Feel the floor beneath your feet. Take 3 breaths deep into your belly. Not to calm yourself, that's a performance too, but to anchor yourself in your body, to come back to what's real rather than what you're imagining. Second 3, choose one true thing. I'm nervous, and that's okay. I care about this, and that's why I'm here. Now you present. Not from false confidence, not from a mask of certainty, from grounded honesty. Your voice might shake, your hands might tremble. That's not failure, that's humanity. And people trust humanity more than Polish. Because when you admit you're nervous, when you show that you care, When you're real about what's happening, you give everyone else permission to be human too. The room relaxes. The energy shifts. You've just done something rare. You've shown up as a person, not a performance. And the presentation might not be perfect. You might stumble. You might lose your place. But you'll be present. And presence, even imperfect presence, is more compelling than polished performance, because people can feel that you're actually there, that you're not hiding, that what they're seeing is real, the difficult conversation. Someone's disappointed in you, angry with you, questioning you. Maybe it's your partner, your boss, your friend, someone whose opinion matters, and every instinct is screaming to defend, to explain, to perform your way back into their approval, to manage their perception so they stop being upset with you. But that's the performance. That's the pattern. And it won't create real resolution. It'll just create the appearance of resolution while the actual issue remains unaddressed. So here's what you do instead. Second one, notice the contraction in your chest, the urge to defend, the impulse to manage their perception. I want to perform my way out of this discomfort. Second two, breathe, feel your feet, return to your body. You're not trying to make the discomfort go away. You're choosing to be with it. Second three, choose truth. I hear you. I don't have a defense right now. Let me think about what you're saying. And then you stay. You stay present with what's uncomfortable. You don't flee into explanation. You don't perform understanding or agreement. You just stay. Present with their anger. Present with your own discomfort. Present with the not knowing. This is where trust is built. Not in agreement. Not in having the right answer. But in the willingness to be with difficulty without fleeing into performance. They might stay angry. They might not be satisfied with your response. But they'll feel that you're actually there. That you're not hiding behind explanations. That you're willing to be with the discomfort of their disappointment without immediately trying to fix it. And that presence, that willingness to stay, creates the possibility of real resolution, not performed resolution. Real, the rejection. They chose someone else for the job, didn't text back after the date, ended the relationship, lost interest, walked away. This is when the old story screams the loudest. See? You weren't enough. You should have tried harder. You should have been different. This proves what you've always suspected. You're not worthy of being chosen. The urge to believe this story is powerful. Because the story makes sense of the pain, it gives you something to fix. If you weren't enough, you can work on becoming more. If you should have been different, you can change. The story offers the illusion of control, but it's a lie, and believing it will send you deeper into performance mode, deeper into the belief that your worth is conditional, that you have to earn love or acceptance or being chosen. So here's the application. Second one, notice the story. There's the narrative. There's the old belief trying to make sense of this pain. Second two, come back to physical sensation. The grief, the disappointment, the bruised ego. Feel it in your body without the narrative overlay, without the story about what it means, just the raw sensation of hurt. Second three, choose one true thing. This hurts, and I'm allowed to feel it. Their choice doesn't define my worth. Not as affirmation, as orientation, as truth. You don't perform resilience. You don't pretend it doesn't matter. You don't rush to, I'm fine, or it wasn't meant to be, or any other spiritual bypass that avoids the actual pain. You're present with the pain. You let yourself feel it. But you don't let it become evidence of your inadequacy. You don't let rejection confirm the belief that you're not enough, because their choice was about them, their needs, their preferences, their journey. It wasn't a verdict on your worth, and you can hold both truths. This hurts, and I'm still whole. The comparison moment. You're scrolling through social media, or you're at a party, or you're hearing about someone's success, their promotion, their relationship, their achievement, and suddenly you feel small, not enough, behind, like you're failing at life while everyone else is winning. The spiral starts, the comparison, the measuring, the belief that their success is evidence of your inadequacy, that their timeline is the right one and yours is wrong. This is so common, it's almost universal, and it's so painful because it taps into that ancient fear. You're being left behind by the tribe. You're not keeping up. You're not valuable enough. But here's the intervention. Second one, notice you've left presence and entered comparison. I'm not in my own experience anymore. I'm measuring myself against someone else's highlight reel. Second two, return to your own direct experience. What's actually true for you right now, in your body, in your life, not in relation to anyone else, just what's true for you. Second three, choose one true thing. I'm on my own path. Their timeline isn't mine. I'm exactly where I need to be. Not as positive thinking, as orientation. You're redirecting your attention from imagined competition back to actual experience, from external comparison to internal truth. And maybe you're not where you want to be. Maybe there are things you're working on, things you're building, things that haven't come together yet. That's okay. That's real. That's your actual experience. But comparing yourself to someone else's curated presentation doesn't help you. It doesn't motivate you. It just fragments you. It pulls you out of presence and into a story about not enoughness that will drain your energy and keep you stuck. Your path is yours. Their path is theirs. There is no race. There is no right timeline. There is only your life, unfolding at exactly the pace it needs to unfold. The awkward silence. You're in conversation, and it's gone quiet. Maybe you ran out of things to say. Maybe the other person did. Maybe the natural flow just paused, and every cell in your body is screaming to fill the space, to say something, anything, to rescue the moment from this terrible, awkward silence. Because silence feels like failure. Silence feels like evidence that you are boring, or the connection isn't working, or something's wrong. But here's where presence becomes power. Second one, notice the panic. I'm afraid of the silence. I want to perform my way through it. Second two, stay with it. Feel the panic in your body, the urge to fill space, the discomfort of not knowing what to say. Don't rush to fix it. Second three, choose one true thing. Maybe that's staying quiet, actually comfortable with the pause. Maybe that's I just went blank. Maybe that's a genuine question that emerges from actually being present rather than from trying to fill space. Either way, you're not performing your way through the discomfort. You're allowing it to exist without making it mean something about you. And watch what happens. Sometimes the other person fills the silence and it's fine. Sometimes you both sit with it and something deeper emerges. Sometimes the silence becomes comfortable instead of awkward because you're not fighting it. The silence was never the problem. Your fear of the silence was the problem. Your belief that you had to rescue every moment from discomfort. But when you can be with silence without panic, when you can let moments be imperfect without making them mean you failed, that's freedom. That's presence. That's power. The pattern across all these scenarios is consistent. Pressure reveals where you're still performing, where you're still grasping, where you're still believing that your survival depends on getting it right. But these moments aren't obstacles to presence. They're the training ground. They're where transformation actually happens. Because every time you choose presence under pressure, every time you stay with discomfort instead of performing your way through it, you're rewiring the belief that your worth is conditional. You're proving to your nervous system that you're safe even when you're not perfect, even when you're nervous, even when you're rejected, even when you don't have the answer. This is how transformation becomes permanent. Not in the easy moments, in the hard ones, in the pressure, in the places where everything in you wants to revert to performance and you choose presence anyway. That's where you become free. And now, if you've come this far, something fundamental has already changed. Not because you followed a formula, not because you mastered techniques, but because you can't unknow what you now know. You've felt the difference between performance and presence. You've experienced those moments where you stopped trying and became more magnetic, not less. Where you dropped the mask and the connection deepened. Where you spoke the truth and people leaned in instead of pulling away. You've touched something real, the knowledge that attraction isn't earned through effort, that it's revealed through presence, that the thing you've been chasing is already here, already available, already yours. You just have to stop blocking it. That insight lives in you now. It will call you back. Every time you drift into performance mode, every time you catch yourself monitoring and calculating and managing your image, there will be a whisper, a knowing, a memory of what it feels like to be present. And that memory will guide you home. The new baseline. You're no longer trying to become attractive. You're choosing to be present. These aren't the same thing. One is grasping. The other is allowing. One is exhausting. The other is easeful. One fragments you. The other integrates you. You'll still have days where you perform, where comparison hooks you, where you forget everything you've learned and fall back into old patterns, where you spend an entire evening monitoring yourself and come home exhausted, wondering why you still do this. But it's different now, because you know it's a choice. You know there's another way, and you know how to find your way back. 3 seconds. Notice. Ground. Choose truth. You have the reset. You have the tools. You have the understanding. And most importantly, you have the experience. You know what presence feels like. You know what it creates. You know it works. So when you slip, and you will slip, you don't spiral into shame. You don't make it mean you've failed or lost your progress, or that none of this was real. You just notice, oh, I'm performing again. And you come back, again and again, as many times as it takes. This is the new baseline. Not perfection, but awareness. Not constant presence, but the ability to return to presence. Not never performing, but knowing the difference and having the choice. The relationships that transform. As you change, your relationships will reorganize themselves. This is inevitable. You can't become more authentic without affecting every connection in your life. Some people will feel uncomfortable with your authenticity because it requires them to look at their own performance. Because your presence highlights their absence. Because they've gotten comfortable with the version of you that performs, and this new version, the real version, challenges that comfort. Let them. Let them be uncomfortable. Let them pull away if they need to. You're not responsible for managing their response to your authenticity. You're only responsible for choosing truth over performance. Some relationships will deepen. The friendships that always felt slightly hollow will suddenly have substance. The conversations that stayed surface will find depth. Because there's finally something real to connect to. You're no longer hiding behind the performance, and that creates space for genuine intimacy. Welcome these. Invest in these. These are the relationships that were waiting for you to show up as yourself. They couldn't deepen before because you weren't available for real connection. Now you are. And some new people will appear, drawn to the frequency you're now broadcasting. People who recognize presence because they're present too. People who are tired of performance and hungry for authenticity. People who see you and feel relief because, finally, someone real. Trust this. Your presence is a filter. It doesn't attract everyone. It attracts your people, the ones who can meet you in truth, the ones who don't need you to perform, the ones who actually see you and choose you anyway. This is how you build a life where being yourself is supported, where you're not constantly code switching and managing different versions of yourself for different audiences, where you can just be, and that being is enough. The confidence that's quiet. You're no longer looking for external validation to confirm your worth. Not because you've convinced yourself you don't need it. Not because you've transcended human desire for connection and approval, but because you've discovered something more reliable, your own witness. You know when you're present and when you're not. You know when you're speaking truth and when you're performing. You know when you're honoring yourself and when you're betraying yourself for approval. That internal knowing becomes your compass. It doesn't make you immune to hurt. It doesn't make rejection painless. It doesn't mean you never care what others think. But it does make you unshakable in your core. Because your worth isn't on the line anymore. Your value isn't determined by whether someone chooses you or likes you or validates you. You have your own validation, your own approval, your own witness that says you showed up as yourself. You honored your truth. You chose presence over performance. That's enough. That's everything. This is confidence. Not the loud kind, not the performed kind, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need to announce itself because it knows itself, the kind that can be rejected and remain intact, the kind that can fail and still know its worth. This is what you've been building toward. Not invulnerability, but groundedness. Not immunity to pain, but resilience rooted in self-knowledge. Not needing nothing from others, but not needing everything from others. The gift you give. Here's what most people don't realize until they experience it. Your presence gives others permission to be present too. When you're comfortable in silence, others relax into it. When you speak vulnerably, others access their own truth. When you admit you don't know something, others stop pretending they know everything. When you show up as yourself, messy, imperfect, real, others feel permission to do the same. Your transformation isn't just personal, it's relational. You're changing the field around you. Every time you choose presence, you're creating space for real connection. Every time you choose authenticity over performance, you're inviting others to do the same. Every time you show up as yourself, you're giving everyone around you permission to stop performing. This is the gift. Not just for you, for everyone you encounter. You're changing the culture of every room you enter, making it a little bit safer to be real, a little bit easier to be human, a little bit more possible to connect. And you're doing this not through preaching or teaching or telling others what to do. You're doing this simply by being, by radiating the frequency of someone who's home in themselves. And that frequency is contagious, the vision forward. Imagine yourself 6 months from now, a year, 5 years. You're in a room full of people, and you're completely at ease. Not because you've mastered some technique, not because you've perfected your presentation, but because you've come home to yourself. You speak when you have something to say. You're quiet when you don't. You laugh when something's funny. Really laugh, without monitoring whether it's attractive. You disagree when you disagree, without softening it or apologizing for it. You ask questions because you're genuinely curious, not because you're trying to seem engaged. You're interested without needing to be interesting. You're present without needing to be impressive. You're yourself without needing permission. And people are drawn to you. Not everyone. Your people. The ones who recognize what you're radiating. The ones who've been waiting to meet someone who's actually there. The ones who see you and feel that rare relief. Finally, someone real. You're attractive, not because you've optimized your presentation, not because you've followed some formula, but because you're no longer hiding. Because you've stopped fragmenting yourself. Because you're fully, completely, unapologetically present. This isn't a fantasy. This isn't wishful thinking. This is the natural result of choosing presence over performance, again and again, until presence becomes who you are. The final truth. Attraction was never about being more. It was always about being real. The version of you that's been waiting beneath the performance. The one that laughs too loud, gets quiet when thinking, admits uncertainty, shows joy without measuring it, speaks truth even when it's not polished. That version is effortlessly magnetic. Not to everyone. It was never meant to be for everyone. But to the right people. The ones who matter. The ones who can actually see you. The ones who've been looking for someone real in a world of performances. You don't need to try hard anymore. You never did. All that effort, all that monitoring, all that careful management of your image, it was blocking the very thing you were seeking. You just needed to stop, to drop the performance, to let yourself be seen as you actually are, to trust that yourself, your actual, unedited, imperfect self, is not only enough, but magnetic. This is the transformation, not becoming someone new, becoming more fully yourself, not adding layers, removing them, not improving, revealing. The person you've been trying to become was always in the way of the person you already are, and the person you already are is the one people have been waiting to meet. Welcome home, to the ease of being yourself, to the relief of not having to perform, to the freedom of showing up exactly as you are and knowing that's enough, to the conversations that flow because you're actually there, to the connections that deepen because you're no longer hiding, to the relationships that feel real because they're built on truth instead of performance, to the quiet confidence that comes from knowing yourself, to the unshakable core that can weather rejection and remain intact, to the inner witness that sees you and approves of you regardless of external validation. Welcome home to the magnetic, authentic, fully present version of yourself that's been here all along, waiting beneath the performance for you to stop trying and start being. You're not effortlessly attractive because you learned techniques. You're effortlessly attractive because you stopped trying to be anything other than what you already are. And what you already are is more than enough. It always was.